To me, the important thing is how does it work in the hands of the customer? What the AI solution for predicting preoperative planning for surgery, the best way to do it, until I wouldn't trust it until I could get a surgeon that I trust who understands it to tell me whether this is a difference maker or not. Otherwise, it's just sales buzz from the tech company.
4 decades in spine, a $3.7 billion exit. Companies taken from nothing to acquisition, and when you ask people in the industry about Ted Bird, none of this is what they lead with. They lead with the fact his teams keep following him from company to company. Ted, the Kevin Bacon of orthopedics and spine, welcome to Content Crib Podcast.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Eric. Thanks for the invitation. Pleasure to be here and spend time with you to talk shop, talk Content Crib shop, but also just a little bit about my background and history.
Yeah, well, thank you very much, Ted. You and I did a podcast way back in the day on another title of a podcast, so we're new and improved. I'm in a hostage in a hotel room behind me, as you can see. My house is under construction, so I'm in a hotel room, and Chris is in his beautiful studio, but thank you for joining us. Appreciate it.
Yeah. So you list yourself as founder, CEO, CCO, and chief marketing officer all at once. What does that combination teach you that a CEO hands-off marketing never really learns? You've done it all.
Great question. Thank you, Chris. I've listed all of those titles and those positions because I've lived them. I've held those roles. Recruiters, executive recruiters today at least are recommending, if you're looking for an opportunity to list positions specifically, because that's what they look for on LinkedIn, versus a profile that talks more about your focus or mission, which I've tried both, where you put in your talking logo that we talk about in Content Crib. I think both are appropriate, but today my profile lists all of my positions. I've lived them. For a CEO who hands off marketing to someone else, that means that they're not really getting the perspective of the customer firsthand. I got it raw. I've served all the roles from starting out as a sales rep in orthopedics in the sports medicine field to being a CEO or a chairman, board chairman of a startup. But I've lived from selling to creating the messaging to doing the education and training to working with the key opinion leaders on various strategic projects, to being in the executive seat, having to run the business. So I think that's a difference, I would say. And from carrying the bag to writing the messaging to training the reps, I understand it. It's different if you're in a turnaround to if you're in a growth stage company or a larger corporate stage company. But it's important to be able to lean on those experiences. And I think for creating a brand for yourself, which is what you guys are doing and helping individuals do that, it's important for people to understand what you've lived and what you know.
Yeah, let's unpack that a little bit because, the titles are important, right? And that's what we put on our LinkedIn page for, a lot of us that are, either work for a company or have a company, right? We kind of put our title a lot into our identity day to day, right? And sometimes it can be too much and you start to identify with your job more than actually who you are as a person. And now with personal branding, we try to teach, there's more to it than that, right? So titles come a distant second to impact. When did that belief really get tested for you in your career?
Yeah, no, I just feel fortunate and blessed. I think a lot of it is I just met the right people at the right time and embraced that and had some great mentors. So I enjoy paying that back or paying that forward today with others. But right off the bat, in my 20s, in my first decade of my career, I had a great opportunity because of a mentor that got me into orthopedics to get into international, outside U.S. commercial responsibilities. So after cutting my teeth in the U.S. in the sports medicine arthroscopy business in sales, I was given that opportunity. And what my mentor did was a risk. And he said, Ted, this is either going to be the greatest thing since sliced bread or canned beer, whichever way you look at it, or it's going to be a great learning experience for you. But he tapped me on the shoulder at 25 and said, I'm ready to have you help me lead our outside the U.S., rest of the world international selling efforts. So to me, I didn't necessarily have that long experience. So I was introduced to these, and it was at that time Eric Richards Medical. So pre Smith and Nephew, I was part of Dionix, and which merged in with Richards. Subsequently became part of Smith and Nephew. But I was sent out into the world to be the international sales and marketing manager. That was my title, to all of these international Richards country managers or distributors. And what I learned is the title didn't matter, especially for a kid. They were looking at me saying, this is, they put a kid in to do a boy in to do a man's job. And so I learned that earning their trust meant delivering, listening to their problems, because international is always, as it is in many companies, the red-headed stepchild, gets the back seat to the U.S., listening to their problems and then solving them, coming in, getting back to them, communicating, responding, and then delivering solutions. The faster I could do that, and the faster I earned their trust. And that was just rolling up the sleeves and learning, improving myself. And that's I've carried with me throughout my career. Doesn't matter what my title is, if it's a VP or a president or a CEO. What's important is the impact and the ability to earn trust through action, and also using your ears more than you use your mouth, listening to the problem. I actually created a kind of a slogan we had for a national sales meeting at one company: listen, respond, deliver. That's what we do. We actually had it printed and put on the wine bottles on every table at the meeting. But I believe that's, and I carry that with me today. Title does not matter so much. It's more about, what kind of impact can you have. And that's my recommendation to those that I mentor, and anybody who wants to learn from my experiences. Don't worry about the title. Worry about the impact and what you can deliver, and the importance of earning trust early on.
So you earned this nickname, which I love, because A Few Good Men is one of my favorite movies of all time. So, what's that, Eric?
Go ahead. No, you're on a roll. Keep going, man. I love your questions. Keep going.
Yeah, I was gonna say, big fan of Kevin Bacon of Orthopedics and Spine. Did that brand happen to you, or did you build that brand, or was it just you look like him, or how did that happen?
Yeah, I don't play the guitar as well as Kevin Bacon does, but it was a nickname that someone used for me. But really, it's a particular character trait of mine of building and nurturing my network, from the and making that a priority. So I always would but I would always look to, in order to remember someone, is to learn something special about them. What's their birthday? What's their hobby? What's a special anniversary? Where did they go to school? Where did they grow up? And that kind of permanently in my brain kind of connects that individual to something special, and it's easy for me to recall. And people say, man, Ted, your memory is, it's like an elephant. You remember everybody, and it seems like you know everyone. So I've always made made it a priority to build relationships, to network. And when someone later on, not that long ago, said, Ted, you're like the Kevin Bacon of not just spine, but orthopedics, because or people just say, Ted knows everyone. And I don't know everyone, but guaranteed within orthopedics, musculoskeletal, particularly within the spine, where I've been for 3 decades out of my 4, if I don't know them, I will know someone that does and get on the phone and I could get a warm introduction to make things happen. So, the message for me is networking, relationships are very important. But I've always told this to people that work with me, on the sales and marketing side, go the extra mile. Learn something special about that individual, and they'll appreciate it when you recall that, or you may well find you have a personal connection. A quick example is, a well-respected, on the rise key opinion leader in spine we were courting, trying to get, into our camp in an area of surgery that we were getting into. And I think I brought up to him that I went to the same undergraduate school. I went to Brown in Providence, Rhode Island, and turns out he went to Brown and even though he went on to Harvard and med school and other places, he connected with me that we both went to Brown. He kept bringing that up. So future meetings, I wore my Brown tie. And it's, we did ultimately connect on that, even though he was there at a different time than I was there. But just learning those little extra things, and then, keeping that network strong. And that's part of, social media today, and creating your brand is putting information out there about your own brand, but not just about your role as a vice president of sales and marketing or president, CEO, or regional sales manager. The fact that, yeah, I went to Brown, I played rugby, I grew up in England, little things people are like, oh, I didn't know that about Ted. Let's learn more. Or people get a new,
well, I have to say you have an amazing
Kevin
presence,
Bacon,
especially,
and inability to sing as well as he does.
Well, I was going to say, Ted, we've gotten to know each other over the years, and I was going to tell people you're an Ivy League guy. You were in the UK. What made you think, I want to get into medical device? Well, what was the catalyst that started it all? I know you've told me the story, but I want everybody else to hear it, because I don't know if I remember either. So,
well, I was exposed to it growing up. My father was a physician. My mother was a nurse, and I have 5 siblings, so 6 kids. All of us are in some type of healthcare or medicine, I think, because of that influence. It was not by design at that stage where I was starting out my career. It was again, the network that my senior year in college, I met this individual, became, fortunate for me, a mentor to me, who was the president of Dionix, the now Smith & Nephew endoscopy company up in Andover, Massachusetts. And he had spent years in Europe running a division of Baxter. And that's why, I thank my mother, who pushed me in his direction after church, one Sunday, said, here, talk to him. Got myself an interview, a cup of coffee, at his house, and he was quite a character. He was a naval officer that had an MBA, that then did very well in business and in medical devices. And his advice to me was Ted, first of all, you need to go and go to Marine officer school in Quantico. You need to get in the Marines and learn about leadership. And after that, you need to get an MBA. You can only go to one of these 5 schools. It's got to be Stanford, Harvard, University of Chicago, Northwestern. Once you've done that, give me a call. I was like, thank you very much, Jerry. So I sent him my cover letter note and my extensive 1-page, resume to say thank you very much. But he called me about 4 months later, right before I graduated. He says, Ted, I've been thinking about you. He liked the fact that I grew up in England. I speak French and German, and he tested my French right there in the interview. He called me back, and he's the one that brought me into Dionix, but he's also the one that said, before you do anything outside the U.S., before you do anything in this business, you need to learn how to sell. So I'm going to give you a territory. You need to learn the school of hard knocks, and I'm going to put you, with a distributor in a territory in New England. At the right time, what I'm thinking about you for is helping me with my international business. So I just feel fortunate to have that opportunity. I was going to get into, I think, magazine and corporate reports sales in Manhattan for R&R Donnelly until he called. I would have gone a completely different way, but never looked back from there. Just got that opportunity, and it was all about the network and the relationships. And so fortunate about the opportunities that I've had, and he was the guy that said, "This is going to be the greatest thing for you, or we're both going to learn a lot, and we'll try again in a different way." So I've learned to embrace opportunity when it comes your way and say yes. To the extent that sometimes I feel like Jim Carrey and Yes Man, the movie, and you're saying, "What did I just do?" But you learned a lot.
A lot of med device CEOs and healthcare CEOs that we work with at ISG, they're pretty invisible. Like, they hide behind the company logo. They don't maybe network as much. Maybe they attend the occasional dinner. They're not really sharing thought leadership online. Why did you decide to put your name and face up front, attend as many content cribs as you can, learn how to do all that? What motivate outside of the networking, which is super powerful at Content Crib, right? We love that side of it, but we're there to learn and learn from each other and help build each other's voices. What made you decide to put your name and face up front?
Yeah, thank you, Chris. Great question. I was a very early adopter of LinkedIn. I can't remember when LinkedIn started, but I kind of saw that opportunity, particularly from my network building standpoint. I said, this is, I could see what Facebook was, and I said, this is not professional. That this professional opportunity to connect and extend my network and as a tool to be able to help me connect. But a CEO who hides behind a logo or a company who is invisible is interchangeable. So, it doesn't allow the community, the industry you're in, to understand you and what makes you tick, or why you might be a good fit for an opportunity if you just hide behind a logo and you don't build a personal brand. So that's a visible leader is someone that, again, it comes back to building trust online by sharing, and not just sharing vanilla because it's such a busy world of attention that you're competing with everyone. If you change it up and you provide personal information, and some people, it makes people nervous. Well, I don't know if I want to talk about when I'm having a tough week or a tough day, or something tough, bad I went through before good. But people then get a new perspective on you and how you relate as a leader in those circumstances. So I believe that it's important to do that, and that's why I put my name out there. Ted Bird, T-Bird, there's a story behind T-Bird as well, because my fraternity at Brown, Eric, they were going around creating the nicknames. And I remember, of course, Animal House. I did not want to be called
definitely.
Flounder.
I have a client that looks just like Flounder. It's like uncanny. I can't even look at him. He's like one of the biggest clients in my space too. It's hilarious.
Yeah. So
I think I would call you D-Day, Ted.
I love that movie because I was in a fraternity as well, so I love that movie.
Oh, I love the movie too.
So I gave him a suggestion and said, "How about T-Bird?" And goes, "That's a cool name, the Fabulous Thunderbird." All right, T-Bird, that's your nickname. It's a great mission accomplished.
There you go.
But my own consulting business is Bird Medical. I think that was one of your questions. Why do Bird Medical versus Ascension or Ascension Summit Equity or something?
Yeah.
And I'm proud of the Bird family name. I like birds. Who doesn't like birds?
Yeah, it's a weird thing when you get older, you like them more. It's just one of those things we don't really know the answer to. But
yeah, why not? I mean, in my marketing role, for example, at Orthofix, I got accused of all the new brand names were somehow bird related. So we had the Firebird pedicle screw system. The next generation was going to be the Thunderbird. That was going to be my ultimate product.
Nice.
Skyhawk, Phoenix. So people are like, okay, we know Ted had something to do with this.
So what
I love it.
what does a strong personal brand do for a CEO? Like, do you have examples, deals, hiring, whether you've raised funds or VC or some sort of connection? This happened probably so many times that you just filed it as normal. But does anything stick out to you in your past of like, oh wow, I shared my voice here and I met this person, or hire this person or sign this deal? I started writing online personally, made it a big commitment almost 3 years ago, and it's just people don't believe me when I tell them some of the things that have happened. And I'm sure you have many stories like that.
Yeah. Chris, I think another great question. Thank you. What it does, what
That's
a
why
strong
Chris is
brand
here.
does.
He's the brains
yeah.
behind the operation. He's it does all the questions.
You
Well,
guys
I was
are a
also
team.
scared about
Yeah,
sharing
yin
online.
and
You
yang.
mentioned that, so I wanted to also say that it's very normal. I think so.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah,
having
man.
that imposter syndrome. We've talked about it at Content Crib, and many people are nervous about hitting that send button the first time. But what it does is it speeds up the process. The process of people, whether it's closing a deal, hiring someone else, or getting hired, or getting an investor. By having that brand out there already, it speeds up that process of whatever you're doing. They already know you. They can finish that diligence that much faster because you've got that brand created, or it's easy for them to understand it if they just go through your profiles. So strong brand is important today in this digital world that we have. The importance of having the strength of brand and the strength of the network as it grows to help your business or whatever you're doing at that time.
There's a line between personal branding and self promotion, and it can be stepped over here and there. I always say that personal brand is really, it's not a vanity thing. I think a lot of people have a issue getting over that, or they don't make that leap because of that thought. It's really a service to the people that you're trying to help, right? So where's that line between personal branding and self-promotion? How do you stay on the right side of it?
Yeah, I think it's important to be humble, be genuine, and lead with value in your brand and your messaging. If you're just using AI, which is easier and easier today, and it's becomes obvious that it's pretty generic, leadership material or graphic. It just becomes noise. So humility, being real, but also providing value, real lessons learned. Again, sharing your mistakes is just as important as sharing your successes. And we all learn that in leadership, is that the mistakes are almost more important than those successes, because what you learn, the key is, did you learn from it, and so you don't make that mistake again or multiple times, and what the context of that is. So there is that line between just straight self-promotion and sharing everything. Some people do that, and maybe that's better on the Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, type of channel. But I believe in the professional arena on LinkedIn, it's important to still share personal perspectives on your brand, your character, your story, but link it to some value that other people in your network or on the channel on LinkedIn can take away from it and say, that's an interesting perspective on that mistake, of that learning that occurred through that process.
15,000 followers in a pretty niche field. When did it how did you grow that, and when did you realize wow, I kind of understand now how this this works, whether that's sharing content or just networking in general. Because I think a lot of people, I get the question all the time is like, how do I find ROI in posting online, right? Like, there's brand deals out there once you have some sort of base or respected as a copywriter. That certainly exists, but really there's a lot of work that goes in before that, and people want to measure that, which is not always the exact right frame of mind, but it must have clicked at some point, like, okay, I know how to grow this into a real following.
Yeah. And there's a lesson that I learned, Chris, great question, about the building numbers, because that could be the game in and of itself. And as I said earlier, I was an early adopter on LinkedIn. So I jumped on it. I started sharing, posting, expanding my network. And then I started getting, at a certain phase, flooded with connection requests. And I accepted everybody. Yes, 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 yes. People that weren't even in my industry. A lot of website developers in India and other places. Nothing against website developers in India, but it wasn't relevant. So then I learned is like, just building numbers for numbers' sake is not the way to go, in my opinion. And talking to others, like the group at the Content Crib, is make sure it's relevant. Find your lane, find your category, and look to become the leader or a leader in that category. And so I found that didn't work, just trying to increase your numbers. So then I actually took some people off, went down and said, I don't need these people. And then you start finding that many of those that are out to connect with you just are trying to sell you something. So you start getting a lot of, solicitations about a service or something that jams up your messaging, inbox and your time on LinkedIn. So my message there is, what didn't work is just trying to accept everybody. It got me up, to a few thousand. But what I found is content that resonated. We may talk about that later. I think that was one of your questions. Is what's your experience? Is what's worked? Is what hasn't on posts? And it's surprising. The more personal posts have gone up over 10, 20, 30,000 views and comments and the hundreds and likes. Is family history. Example, I have a second cousin who died in Dunkirk on the beach. He was in the British Army, was a surgeon, and got off his boat, went back to the water to help some of his British Army comrades on the beach, and got killed. And I found a whole write-up, and I shared that around right after that movie, the latest Dunkirk movie that came out a couple of years ago. And there's this picture of this dashing British officer with looks like, Cary Grant with the mustache, Colonel Dennis Byrd. People loved it. I mean, they just loved that whole connection thing. And not so much about my latest, promotion or assignment, into a chairman position for a startup, but it's more the personal things, the connection type things that have probably at the top of my list on feedback.
So, if another CEO in your space came up to you and said, I want you to consult for me, or I'll hire you an hour or two a week for LinkedIn, what would you do for them, or how would you tell them to best spend it to start building their voice and their brand? If they had the time. Most CEOs don't, but if they, okay, everybody has time for anything. It's how they decide, right? So most decide not to, right? So, but if they did, how would you tell them to spend it?
I would say call Eric Anderson and Chris Gross. These guys are experts, but I would recommend to a CEO or leader that is interested and sees the value of digital brand identity, is spend an hour a week, on start with your profile to really, and you can get, whether it's Chris and Eric or others or myself to help with ideas on that who do that for a living. And that's not one of the primary things I do for a living, but I know people who do do that very well. Is so the audience, the channel, really understand what makes that person tick. So the profile is not as generic as everybody else out there. And then post a couple times a week, at least a couple times a week, your point of view on the company, on the market, the customer, your management philosophy. Put some personal stuff in there. Use video, more important now than ever, as is reinforced at Content Crib. Is get a video platform, get comfortable with video, and and stick with it, and continue that process with videos. And I think that's the formula, Chris and Eric, is start with the profile, provide personal kind of point of view on different aspects that are going to make sense to the audience, and that people are going to start to recognize and build a trust in your point of view and your experience, and that will help. I think your company, that'll help you individually, and most CEOs don't realize the value of that, but some of them do, and have been very successful with it.
Yeah, we're gonna pivot to from the branding talk into AI. Somehow we became like part AI podcast of like what's going on in the space. I don't know how that happened. Probably the fear mongering and to tell people it's not that bad and to seize the day. But we'll touch on some AI because I think it's important as you're probably getting hit with more products to vet and potentially add to your company, or depending on how the process goes for your procurement and whatnot. But where does AI generally belong in your space and in med device commercialization right now? Where is it being oversold?
Yeah, I think AI is kind of like customer relationship management databases back in the day, CRM. It's for a sales team. You hear it all the time from sales reps or sales managers. It's like, or leaders of sales departments as well. If you put, crap in, you get crap out, or you don't, if it's hard to use and your team doesn't actually use it, or it's just taking up their time and they're spending more time on spreadsheets than they are actually on sales calls and out there, doing the business, it becomes frustrating very quickly if it doesn't deliver results. So AI now, is similar in that how you prompt, in my experience, AI, and how you direct AI, and I think it's getting better and better at this. But if you just put some general question or prompt in for AI, you're going to get a pretty general scrub response. It's not going to help you really differentiate yourself in what you're using it for. So the two places are obviously in content, in material, in positioning on the marketing side and description, and it's even gotten better and better just even on the graphics side and on the presentation side. But for sales, it's about identifying customer, the appropriate customer, the perfect fit for your product, your solution, or what you're selling, and using AI to help that process to help identify your funnel, your sales funnel is important aspect of it. So there's the kind of the promotional marketing messaging aspect of it, and then there's the sales operations aspect of it. In my experience, this is in the commercial realm, is how AI is getting better and better, but you really need to have someone who understands it. Chris, I haven't finished your new book on AI yet. I'm taking it on vacation with me next week, so I'm going to have some.
It doesn't sound very relaxing. It's pretty dense on the sales stuff in the beginning, so feel free to skim over that. But it gets better, I promise.
Okay.
Yeah, give that a roll.
But the theme is how how you ultimately, you can use it to allow you to earn trust, with your audience. And again, that's a theme in business and in leadership and in relationship building is, that Stephen Covey, Jr. Wrote about the speed of trust. It's so important in the sales process. But back to AI, I think it's just, um, don't use it generically, but look at the programs that really can be refined and tailored to your situation, your solution.
Yeah, so it's so well said, and thank you for that. It's very wise and refreshing because it is being abused beyond repair at some points, and it's nice to hear leaders say that. So, are you not seeing a ton of products integrating it into any sort of their devices or workflows or intake forms or testing or any of that?
Absolutely. I mean, just in the spine world, enabling technologies, whether it's robots or
yeah. So how did? Sorry to cut you off, but I need to know. Like, I know from the tech space or even our space in customized medicine, who is vetting those? There's no like roadmap or people don't put budgets together. Like, understand if it's going to work, and then they have to. Is it just like all the way to the top? Like you as a CEO have to make these decisions because there's really no.
To me, the important thing is how does it work in the hands of the customer? So, what the AI solution for predicting preoperative planning for surgery, the best way to do it, until I wouldn't trust it until I could get a surgeon that I trust who understands it to tell me whether this is a difference maker or not. Otherwise, it's just sales buzz from the tech company, and my true north is the customer. In the hands of the customer, actually working on a patient, is this a difference maker? Not hearing it from the software engineer or the tech company about why it's how great it is. It's really everything, and hopefully that's going to be the same 50 years from now. Whoever's maybe the humans aren't doing the surgeries anymore at that point, but you have your humanoid robot tell you whether it works, whether it's better or not, and consult with the trained physician who may be on the spaceship golf course somewhere. Calling in the shots.
It's funny because I was going to jump in here. I had a CEO tell me literally the other day, he said, I'm really wondering if AI is going to become the most overpriced.
Well, that's why I asked the question I did.
Yeah, and I was like, whoa, I was like, that kind of went across my bow, like, well, what do you mean? And he just gave me all these different examples, like we're, hiring AI to do this $350,000 project, which I figured out we could have done it with 19 people for $200,000. It's like, wait a minute, this wasn't the whole reason behind. Like, yeah, is the AI correct? Yeah, but so were the 19 people that did this project one time. So it's a weird paradigm because every other kind of big invention has really reduced cost. And the AI is not doing that right now because of all the VC money that's been plowed into all the AI technology. So it's interesting. Is it going to be Chris has his theories on, is the bubble going to pop, or is it popped right now? I don't know.
Well, we'll see. I think it's starting to enter into our lives, very prevalently, in conversations where people are just, to me, I wonder about the future, just for the next generations. And always, again, like try and be mentors and think about my kids and my grandkids now. What is it going to be like for my grandkids that are between the ages of 6 months and 6 years old? What's college going to be like for them? Do you need to go to college?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting. I mean, I love using Claude for sales reports analysis and giving like my sales reps the tools that say, down accounts, why, trends, giving it to inventory for projections based on, up our pars for production, like things of that nature that a lot of people don't have a lot of time for, don't know how to manipulate, Claude or AI to utilize it and put it into reports that are easy to read. I made, custom sales playbooks for, certain reps that want to identify a certain opportunity. So there's a lot of cool ways to use it that keeps it really basic and helpful for sure. I mean, it's, we haven't had a ton of like AI products into the pharmaceutical manufacturing side. However, there is one major one. They're producing some non-sterile production line device, which is interesting, but won't bore you on that side of thing. But just to kind of wrap up our conversation today, because it's been so helpful, your perspective as a med device founder, you've seen it all. You've been in every I'm sure you could tell some stories of like the pre-cell phone days and like pagers all the way to AI. I mean, your perspective is not to date, age you. Sorry, Ted, but you look pretty good for your age. But it's pretty cool to share that experience, and then now you're being able to talk about AI and the impact you see. I mean, it's clear like your resume and your forward thinking, and then personal brand building. It's quite impressive, and I think a lot of people are going to take a lot from this podcast. And
this podcast has definitely not been run by AI. It's been run by humans. But I want to say thank you, Ted, for coming on. We appreciate your wisdom and all the things that you've done. And if you would just tell people what's going on right now for you, what's next in the future, and all that fun stuff.
Yeah, thank you. No, my message to those listening to the podcast is change is happening, as we would all agree, faster and faster. So number one, embrace change. And that's what I've always done throughout my career. And even at this stage of my career is I'm still looking to learn, how AI would make sense for me, in certain areas of a new opportunity, of evaluating a new opportunity or operating in a new opportunity. So you're never too old to be, embracing that change and staying, on the leading edge of that. Secondly, build your brand, make it personal so people can earn that trust and understand who you are, what makes you tick, and that's an important part of today's digital world and brand identity. What I'm doing today is I enjoy, as I recommended, embracing change. So I enjoy innovation. So in the last decade or so, I've really gravitated and moved towards faster moving, more innovative companies, generally smaller, but it might be a division of a company that's smaller that has something new. And today, it's in the US market particularly so hard to get access into the hospitals if you have a generic product category that doesn't really, have a defining, differentiated value proposition. It is extremely frustrating and hard. So that's the other reason I've kind of gravitated towards innovation. And then I've found myself specializing in helping companies, figure out that go-to-market strategy or that commercial traction and growth strategy to help that innovation take hold in the marketplace and grow as you get it into the marketplace. So my clients are either companies that are looking for a strategist, but also a Kevin Bacon, somebody who can introduce them to key customers, key networks that they don't have and haven't had the chance to hear that story. In addition to investors, I've had a number of projects in the last couple of years with private equity groups looking to build business, and they find me through LinkedIn, no surprise, as an expert in the space to say, we want your opinion on where this market's going. Help us create a short list of what products we should buy, what companies we should buy, and then maybe help us integrate or get involved in helping steer or that company in the right direction. So I've really enjoyed that and continue to build my network. I will be at the next Content Crib in October. I've booked my ticket and looking forward to that. You guys have just continued to evolve and bring that experience to a different level. It's not just the same meeting every 6 months. And so I'm really excited about this next one in Bentonville.
Well, thank you so much, Ted. Appreciate you coming on. Appreciate you coming to Arkansas, and look forward to seeing you in October.
Likewise.